right, good morning. I'm so excited to be here and see what we've got in store over the next 2 days. It's going to be exciting stuff. Now, as we've seen, accessibility and inclusiveness are a huge part of the Xbox family of devices. And here to tell us more about the next generation of accessibility guidelines is Evelyn Thomas. Evelyn, how are you?
Great. Good to see you.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the pivot. This is an interesting take on GDC, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, don't have to fly out. We're here in studio. This is pretty exciting. So let's talk about, can you tell us a bit about why you're here today?
Sure. So my job at Xbox is accessibility. Part of what we do is to provide game developers with the best practices and guidelines to help them understand how to make more inclusive games for the gaming and disability community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, we're going to get into those guidelines in just a second, but I guess maybe let's talk about the inspiration a bit, because I feel like over the course of past few generations of gaming, if you want to call it that, it's kind of been maybe a wild west of accessibility. Like some people have it in the games, some people don't have it in the games. From your perspective, what has that kind of been like to watch that and now watch it kind of evolve?
Well, it's been amazing to see this evolution over the past 3 to 5 years of game developers understanding that there's a huge community out there of gamers that really want to play their games, but might not be able to because of the way the game's designed. And when I say a huge community, I mean millions of gamers that are out there.
Right. Now, I actually think we have somebody from Twitter coming on to talk about how much they love accessibility here. Let's see if we can pull up this tweet. All right, here we go. We have from Hugh Fannin, #GameStackLive. I love how the accessibility connects the people together with the game itself, as well as people all around the world. Kind of like to what you were talking about. I'm sure you've seen a lot of reactions sort of to this sentiment, and it's been inspiring to see. Yeah, so that's really cool. Now, let's dive right into the accessibility guidelines. Now, actually, really quick. Last time I interviewed you, we talked about the console stuff, narrator, magnifier, and those have been like console-wide solutions.
Yeah.
But I think for game developers, maybe they thought that was maybe enough, or they maybe don't invest as much time. Can you tell us a bit about why it's so important on a game level to include stuff like that?
Absolutely. So at the end of the day, we can create accessible experiences on the console or accessible experiences on PCs, but nobody's going out and buying a really expensive gaming PC or the next generation console to play around with the operating system. They're buying it because they want to play games. And so if the games themselves aren't accessible, then there really isn't great benefit for the gamer.
That's right. And what may work on the dashboard does not work inside of a game.
Absolutely.
We know that. We've seen it time and time again. All right, so now let's dive into these accessibility guidelines. We heard it a bit in the last segment. What are the Xbox accessibility guidelines?
Yeah, so the Xbox Accessibility Guidelines, or ZAGs for short, are a set of best practices that we've developed over the course of several years in partnership with the gaming and disability community and advocates and subject matter experts. And we took all of that feedback and sort of synthesized it down to these 25 best practices and guidelines. And the intent of these are to provide game developers and, frankly, the whole game studio with guidance on how to actually make more inclusive content. It helps designers to sort of inspire them in terms of their creativity and ideas for generating ideas. It also helps the game developers themselves actually have those guardrails to know where they should be focusing their attention. And then it also helps in testing, kind of that checklist at the end to make sure you've hit all the marks and you're actually building an inclusive product.
Exactly. That's awesome. And I think going back to the point of it kind of being a hit and miss and Wild West and back in the day of like whether you include things, I think it's awesome that these guidelines are out there. We'll get to that a little later on, like where they can find it. I'm curious though, from your perspective, why do you think Microsoft put such an emphasis on accessibility specifically?
Well, we hear all the time from game developers that they really want to make their games inclusive, but they don't know where to start. And so we hope that by building this set of guidelines and best practices, it helps point them in the right direction. It gives them a understanding of what to build and how to build it. And hopefully it'll make it feel a little less intimidating and feel less like boiling the ocean.
That's an interesting way to put it. I would say, like, even for somebody, I like to consider myself as having perfect vision, which maybe it's true, maybe it's not, who knows. But, I've seen it time and time again when there are games that have really small subtitles, for example. Yeah. And for me, it's hard to read. And so I can only imagine, if you don't have someone guiding you or someone in your studio there to kind of give you that feedback. You don't know what you don't know. And so
Right.
I think these guidelines are absolutely fantastic points to have in there. And so that's really cool that they're in there. Now, from a game perspective, what have been some of the examples that you've seen that have taken advantage so far of these guidelines?
Well, Coalition is a perfect example. They actually had been on this journey long before we actually even put out the guidelines, but a lot of the principles and best practices that they applied actually are reflected in the guidelines themselves. And they mentioned something called an inclusive design sprint. And what that does is it actually gives the game studio an opportunity to engage with the community directly, better understand what the community needs, talk with them through what the feature sets are and capabilities that they want to see in the game to help them better be able to play. And then take some time to sort of big sky think about what that means and translate that into a set of really cool features and capabilities in the game that benefit not just the gamers with disabilities, but a broad audience in general.
Oh, I love that. You said the C word, community, there. And I think that is a really important part of everything. We saw in the last piece with the Coalition and Sightless Combat. And I actually got to play at XO19 in London, an event Xbox put on last year. I got to play with Sightless Combat and see him not only navigate through the system to actually set up the accessibility options, but also see him utilize those things like the pinging system. From your perspective, like on a personal level, what have been some of the stories that have been kind of inspiring for you to see coming out of these guidelines and this renewed emphasis?
The real story is the gamer. You know, when we hear about a gamer that plays a game that kind of introduced some of those guidelines and principles into their development best practices, and that game comes out and the community can actually play the game when otherwise they haven't been able to in the past, it's really heartwarming. I mean, accessibility is not just about making something that works for the gaming and disability community. It's about making an inclusive product all up so that anyone can enjoy it. Because you mentioned it, you know, sitting 10 feet away on your sofa and watching a game that might have really small text, even you benefit from some of the capabilities that are in games.
100%. Now let's get into the development process because I know a lot of developers are watching. What would you? There are a million things to consider when you're making a game, and I think accessibility is right up there at the top because if people can't play your game, then what's the point of making it? What would you say are 3 things that developers should sort of keep in mind, top of mind during the build cycle?
So I think the inclusive design principles are the things that all game developers should to take to heart. It's broken into these 3 things. First is recognize exclusion. Everyone has abilities, but sometimes people's abilities prevent them from being able to play the game the way it's designed. So recognizing that there's a huge audience, and like I said, millions of gamers that might not otherwise be able to play your game the way it's designed is the first principle of inclusive design. The second one is learn from that diversity. No one knows more about what they need in a game than the gamer with the disability. So as you heard from the folks at the Coalition, they actually engaged directly with the community and met with them and sat down and understood what they need in that game, what the capabilities are and the feature sets, and partnered with them so that they can point to that North Star and know what the right thing to build is for the community. And of course, the third one is build for one and extend to many. And building a feature set for someone who has a specific disability benefits them and benefits that audience, but it also benefits a broad audience. Think closed caption is the perfect example that you mentioned. If you offer closed caption in a game, it makes it better for gamers who are deaf or hard of hearing, but it also helps a wide range of people that might be playing their game on the subway and not have their headphones in, or have a baby next to them that they're trying to put to sleep and they want to be able to hear the dialogue that's going on in the game.
Yeah, just so many great examples. And I think, you know, all 3 of those are super important. But the second one specifically, and I've heard this many times, and we heard it in the last segment, like nothing about us without this. Making sure that when we're designing these features and putting them in the game to make sure that everyone can play, have people in the room that can speak to them. Don't make a decision based off of just what you think might be good.
If you don't intentionally include, you unintentionally exclude.
So powerful.
So engaging with the community and understanding what that needs, that concept of nothing about us without us is so important in game development.
That's right. Now, what are some other examples that you can point to for benchmark games or teams within accessibility?
Oh, there's a huge variety of games out there that are available on the market. Some that are made by Microsoft, some that are made by third party. Coalition's Gears, I think, is the canonical example of a game that decided that they were going to really truly embrace accessibility and inclusion and build a game that benefits such a wide audience of people, and from gamers who are deaf or hard of hearing, gamers who may be blind or low vision, maybe gamers have limited mobility, and so some of the compound switch that might be more difficult for a gamer to play, they actually worked around that and did button binding and things like that. So there's all kinds of feature sets that make it really great for a gamer with disabilities in that game and others.
Oh, so good, so good. Now, we actually have a question from our Discord. Civil Mind says, that was remarkable. It's really cool to see these innovations that a studio can create. Great job, Gears 5 team.
Yeah.
That's great. And so the reactions have been pouring in, and it's been great to see. And even, again, people who don't need those features, I think we've seen this sort of, this push to sort of support, even from like canIPlayThat.com. We saw that in the Save Game feature. That is a website that kind of rates games based off of how well they implement accessibility features. Can you talk a bit more about that and how the response has been?
Well, there's a huge community of gamers out there that actually want to play the games, and when they can play them, they go out and they promote within their community what about that game makes it better for them to play. And there are lots of review sites out there that are managed and run by gamers with disabilities that just want to get the word out and educate not just the community that they live within, but also the broad community of everyone in gaming, so that they understand what it is that they benefit from in game development. And Can I Play That is a perfect example of that, where the Coalition's Gears 5 actually received a 6 out of 6, which is the first time that a game has ever received that score for deaf and hard of hearing. So
that's so great. And Courtney, who is in charge of that site, she's actually an Xbox MVP. So it's also great seeing Xbox recognize some of the gamers who are behind some of these cool things. Now, I believe we have a Twitter message to come up here in just a second, which I'm very excited to see. You can remember, use hashtag GameStackLive if you want to join the conversation. We have Marissa, Secret Agent 29. Love getting to hear all this passion for accessibility in gaming on the dev side. Hashtag GameStackLive.
Nice.
I think this whole event has really been about pulling back the curtain, and I'm sure obviously there are a lot of developers watching, but I think there are a lot of community members also watching who I think are probably going to hold developers to a higher standard going forward, and I think the guidelines are going to be a great way of doing that. So tell us a bit more about the accessibility lab that's on campus. I've been there a few times. Every time I go in there, it literally blows me away. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so the Inclusive Tech Lab was built a few years ago to actually serve a couple of purposes. One is to help our internal development teams better understand why it's important to invest in accessibility in gaming, getting an understanding of some of the requirements that gamers have and some of the areas of focus that benefit the gaming and disability community. The other is we look at it as an embassy, sort of this safe space for gamers with disabilities to come in and share with us what it is they need. We look at it as it's built for them, not about them. So they can come in, they can partner with us, help us better understand what it is that we can do to make the game systems, our hardware, and the games that we build better for everyone. And then the last thing is, and we look at this sort of as rising tides floats all boats. We want to demonstrate to the world that we're walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And the investments that we're making, we feel are important in the industry. And we hope that by doing that, it'll encourage other game developers and industry area professionals to actually provide more inclusive and accessible experiences in games, in hardware, and software.
Definitely walking the walk. I got to say, again, going back to that lab, it's really cool. We actually bring our Xbox MVPs out here once a year. Unfortunately, obviously this year, circumstances are preventing that. But every year when they walk into that room, the Inclusive Tech Lab, their faces light up. And then it gets to that point where they're starting to see it, like the realness of it all. And it's all about building empathy, I think, and understanding from people. I think we have one more Twitter message. So let's go to that here and see. We have HR Bomber 1414. Very happy to see Microsoft really focusing on the accessibility. This just allows more people to be able to enjoy something together. Hashtag GameStackLive. That's what it's all about.
Yep.
More people playing the games. And, one added benefit of that, shorter lobby times. More people who can play games, you have shorter lobby times, right? That's
True.
There you go. All right, so now what do you want developers to know when they're designing a game for accessibility?
Well, like I said, nothing about us without us. The most important thing is that you listen to the community, you understand what it is that they need, so that when you're building that game, you're taking their needs into consideration and you're building an inclusive, accessible, piece of content for everyone to enjoy.
Love it. Now let's bring it home. What would you say for Xbox the future of accessibility looks like, and industry-wide even?
I think that the coalition said it best. It's not about building a feature. It's not about building a discrete individual capability. It's about a mindset shift. It's having that part of your DNA. So when you are creating your game, you're thinking about your entire audience and thinking about what they need and thinking about how those inclusive design principles recognize exclusion, learn from that diversity, and actually build for one and extend to many.
Oh, so great. Again, I think there's a lot of benefit a lot of the developers are going to be able to take from this. And it's just been really great watching, sort of living that journey kind of through you vicariously, seeing all the amazing progress the teams here at Xbox have been doing in accessibility. So Evelyn, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you.